Hi there, everyone. Ado here, social care management team from Crosscare Homeless Services, former member of the Social Care Workers Board at Crewe, and a former member of the Consultative Forum for former residents of mother and baby homes and allied institutions. An interesting one today. I was just reading the child reporting earlier on, and I was reading an article from the Times that Kitty Holland wrote, and I thought it would be worthwhile bringing this to you, especially those of you who are working in children's residential care. Any of you working with any of the foster care organisations, or really anyone working in social care at all. And the report that I read concerns a letter that District Court Judge Dermot wrote in May. He wrote it to the government, all the government departments and some TDs. It's an unprecedented letter coming from the benches of the courts directly to ministers and other departments. I think it's one of the first times this has happened, and it was just before his retirement. So Kitty Holland got this and wrote a piece in the Irish Times. I'll read a bit about this for you, and then I'll highlight where you can go to read his full letter and the report. The piece that Kitty wrote starts off with: an unprecedented crisis in services for the most at-risk children in state care is leading to a likelihood of claims against the state, a retired judge has warned. Former Dublin Metropolitan District Court Judge Dermot says up to 130 highly vulnerable children are in unsuitable and unapproved placements, such as holiday centres, hotels and B&Bs, because there was nowhere else to put them. He says systemic failures across TUSLA, the Garda, the Department of Education, the HSE and the prison services are undermining and frustrating the best efforts of frontline social workers to comply with regulations and protocols. In a strongly worded letter to four government ministers, TUSLA, the State Claims Agency and the Ombudsman for Children, and dated May the 17th, 2023, when he was still on the bench, former Judge Sims says he has the utmost concern for the immediate predicament and welfare of children in the care of the state. Very strongly worded stuff so far. There is the risk, or indeed likelihood, that the state will face claims in the future arising out of its failure to comply adequately with its duty of care and statutory duty to many of these children, he says. His letter is published on Monday with his permission as one of 67 reports from the Child Law Project, formerly known as the Child Care Law Reporting Project, which compiles reports on cases involving children in care or subject to care applications in the courts. And I think you can get that at childlawproject.ie. And if any of you are in social care and haven't read any of that, you really should. It had become increasingly clear over the past year challenges facing TUSLA were growing, especially finding safe and regulated places to accommodate at-risk children, he says. I have now been told by TUSLA and its legal advisors in the court and on record that it is an unprecedented crisis. There are systemic failings in emergency care placements for at-risk children, and groups of men are sexually exploiting children in residential care. Where is the outrage? As well as difficulties recruiting and retaining social workers, he notes a lack of properly regulated, suitable placements for foster care, residential placements and special secure care. Where a properly approved placement cannot be found, children are placed in what is known as special emergency arrangements. A lot of you will have heard of that, SEAs. These could include hotels with a suitably trained adult supervisor and an allocated social worker. Every time a child is placed in an SEA, Tusla makes a report to the State Claims Agency, the former judge notes. Citing specific unnamed cases, he says one involved a 6-year-old girl placed in what Tusla said in court was an unsuitable and unapproved emergency placement after 4 foster placements have broken down. 6-year-old girl. These type of cases, too numerous to outline, have featured in the court on a daily basis, he said. The reasons for the crisis have their genesis in systemic failure, not just in Tusla, but also in its interactions with other state agencies and their interactions with each other. In the HSE, including its disability and mental health services, there is inadequate discharge planning at the end of involuntary detention from special care, said Judge Sims. An Garda Síochána is not communicating adequately with Tusla on child sex abuse investigation, conduct of specialist interviews with children, and children in care who are missing and at risk of involvement in criminality, including being sexually exploited, he says. The prison service is not consistent in ensuring access between prisoners and their children, while the Departments of Education and of Higher Education, he says, are failing to provide enough psychological assessments to vulnerable children, enough special needs assistance, and third-level places to study social work. While there are policies and protocols to keep children safe, the difficulty for a court is frequently how the care of a child or children can be achieved where the crisis has undermined, undone, and frustrated them. It is his earnest hope, said Judge Sims, that immediate and coordinated action will be taken to address and remedy the crisis, which indeed may ultimately mitigate possible future claims against the state. Kate Duggan, who's now the new CEO of Tusla, said the reports provide an important and valuable insight into the operation of the childcare system in the courts, but also evidences the unprecedented challenges that the agency faces. This includes an increasing referral rate, almost 83,000 to Tusla's child protection and welfare services alone, an inadequate supply of emergency and alternative care placements, foster care and residential care, an increase in the number of separated children seeking international protection, and workforce supply issues, particularly in social work and in social care. The Irish Prison Service said on Sunday night it will study and consider the report when it's published. Comment was also sought from the Garda, the Department of Education and the HSE on Sunday evening. And that there ends the piece in the Times. So his full letter is reported unredacted at the childlawproject.ie. Go and read it there. Kate Duggan's admission is that things are very bad in Tusla. For those of you working in residential childcare and indeed right across the social care sector, there's some chastening stuff here and it's well worth reading and reflecting on. Talk to you all soon.